Welcome to the MindSpeaking Podcast, where we talk about the human side of data. In other words, data, communication, and personal development. My name is Gilbert Eikelenboom. I'm driven by curiosity, and my aim is to spread insights that you can apply in your life starting today. So, let's do it. Let's start MindSpeaking. Welcome, everybody. In this first podcast episode, we have Danny Ma on the show. I'm very excited today. Danny Ma and I had some LinkedIn chat conversations, but we haven't had the opportunity yet to speak in person in a real call. Who's Danny? Danny is the Chief Data Mentor at datawithdanny.com. He's also the founder and CEO of Sydney Data Science. And Danny is a regular speaker at global data conferences, meetups, and podcasts where he shares the importance of mentorship for all data professionals. And we're going to dive into the mentorship piece later. He's also an incoming technical instructor for Really and Pearson, and 60,000 people following his tips on LinkedIn. So I'm excited to speak with you today, Danny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. It's absolutely an honor to speak with you and to meet with you for the first time as well. So this is really a privilege, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think it's fascinating that we are connected from the other side of the globe, right? You're based in Sydney, I'm based in Amsterdam, which is exactly or almost exactly on the other side of the world. So I'm excited to hear from you. You have such an interesting journey, so much to share on data science, data analytics, and I'm excited to talk. What I would like to start with is I would like to start by talking about Muay Thai Kickboxing. So recently you did a post where you were in action, right? You showed your passion for Muay Thai. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so it's really funny actually. So I shared that post last week on Monday, where it was a picture of me kicking a heavy bag, and it looks pretty hardcore, pretty badass. And then I kind of started doing Muay Thai straight after high school because I wanted to be like a fighter dude who was cool and really strong and all that sort of stuff. And I started going to kickboxing training. Like I went almost every single day for the better half of 2 years or so. And then that ended up in me eventually going to Thailand and training for 1 whole month.
Wow.
That was really cool. I think that was a great physical experience. I was training up to 6 hours a day or something. So that was really, really fun. But the funny thing is, so I posted that on Monday last week. And I think there's a saying like fate loves irony, because on 2 days later, I injured myself whilst I was doing kickboxing as well. Like I did something to my Achilles tendon. So for the past week, I've kind of been limping a little bit and just trying to ice my leg a little bit. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting injury. There wasn't much in it at all, but I'll be out of kickboxing for the next 4 weeks or so.
Oh, what a shame. Yeah, what a shame.
It was very enjoyable before I injured myself.
Yeah, I could tell from the picture that you were enjoying it. And what do you enjoy most about Muay Thai kickboxing?
So Muay Thai is, I think it's one of the most effective martial arts if you really need to damage your opponent whilst you're standing up. But apart from that side of the effectiveness of it, I just really enjoy the training. For me, doing 6 hours of training a day in Thailand was almost like a dream, because I just love working out and doing all those things that were really challenging. These days, I'm not training 6 hours a day, but I still like going on relatively long runs when I can. So anywhere from, I don't know, maybe around 8 kilometers is my average running distance. But I just like the feeling of getting your body moving and doing things which are challenging and always trying to improve and learn new things. And I think that goes not just for kickboxing and Muay Thai, but also for our careers in data and everything else that we're learning in life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was about to ask you about the parallels between the two, right? Between that and your career, but you named up a few already. And I agree, because sports is not only good for your health, but also it develops your persistence. You need to work out and improve yourself every time, and being okay with failing. I mean, the first time you tried kickboxing, you were probably not very good at it, but now much better, especially after the training in Thailand, I assume.
I think so. I hope so. But it still makes everyone is still vulnerable to getting injured at the same time. So even though
Yeah.
I've been, even though I've been training for maybe 10 years, I'm still very, very vulnerable. And you always get the reminder every now and then when you hurt yourself.
Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe we get more vulnerable as well. I returned from a holiday in Spain last week, and we did some hiking in the Sierra Nevada, which is in the south of Spain,
Oh, amazing.
with my girlfriend, and we really, really love hiking and being active. And I do sports almost every day. But after the hike, I got a bit of a knee ache, and this was new for me. And I'm 32. My girlfriend is 29. She's joking that I'm getting very old. Luckily, she's turning 30, so I can tease her a little. But I do see that I get more injured more often and more easily. So I need to take care of that. So even though we're training, we also need to be careful. And you spoke a bit about about the past, about the kickboxing and Muay Thai. Can you tell? Can you take us back to your childhood? What type of, yeah, who was Danny Ma in high school?
That's a great question. And it makes me feel like I'm talking to my therapist or something. But in terms of childhood, I think I had a very, so I was a first, I think it's a first generation immigrant. So my parents were from Hong Kong and I was born in Hong Kong, and we made it over to Australia when I was around 2 years old. I've just turned 30, so that's around 28 years or so. Um, I think my childhood was pretty regular for like a typical Asian immigrant family. My parents wanted me to do well in school, become a doctor, become a lawyer, all those sorts of things. My mom was very, very smart. I think she was where I acquired most of my brain genetics. And my dad was very, very talkative and very friendly. And he actually challenged me to try and do lots of different things. So if I could kind of like summarize my childhood in a nutshell, it was that I just tried a lot of things, and there was no fear of failure, but there was always like a pressure of doing better than average. So I don't know if that's like an Asian thing, or if it was just my parents always pushing me, or they spotted in my personality when I was young that I could just keep going until I reached some level that I was happy with. But yeah, I did a lot of different sports, musical instruments. My mom always told me to go to extra additional math classes and English classes when I was growing up as well, because that's what all my other cousins did. And I eventually made it into like I think it's still the top ranking high school in all of Australia. So I think like every year thousands of children would try and qualify for a place in this high school, which only has like 120 students intake each year. So I somehow made it in. You had to do like some crazy multiple choice tests and all these other things, and you have to rank in like the top 1 percentile or even higher. And yeah, I think growing up and going through my adolescence in that sort of environment was also very interesting. People were always trying to be very competitive in the book smart area. So you'd have people like discussing their grades, and you would feel like a failure if you got an average mark and all these different things as well. So I think all of those sorts of experiences kind of turned me into who I am today, I think. But I think most of my young childhood, the time that I spent with my dad and my mom, was probably the most character building parts of it, that led to probably why I'm doing the things that I'm doing today.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because you're mentioning a lot of points that I see now in your post, in the way you work, and in the way you inspire others to do the same. Because you mentioned that your mother, or you were yeah, your mother was very smart and talking about this mathematical part, but also your father who encouraged you to do different type of things and instruments, and this is all what I see in your journey as well right now, that you're not afraid to try new things, and in a very kind way as well. You always try to help others, to help others grow and make steps. And I remember last week you did a post about that being kind to yourself is important as well, that you need to put yourself on the first place and put your oxygen masks first, on yourself before you're helping others. Can you tell me a bit more about that and how that shapes your decisions?
So there's always a saying on an airplane that they tell you, put on your oxygen mask first before you go and help others. And most of the time, I'm not that person. I'm the person who would try and put masks on everyone to make sure I help as many people as possible without really taking myself into account. And I think that over time, even though I'm aware of this and I know that I should be taking care of myself first, I still fall into periods where I just kind of burn the candle at both ends. And I might be working, but I'm also trying to do crazy hours trying to help some of my mentors or some of my mentees in some of the different platforms. Um, or I'm just trying to overload myself. And I think over time I've become quite good at juggling different things, but there's always like a period where you just need to kind of focus on yourself. And the post that you're mentioning, it was actually the same kickboxing post. So I recently, Sydney just came out of like a big lockdown for 2 or 3 months, and I was really really motivated to go back into the gym and start kicking something to release some stress or whatever it is. So yeah, for the past 2 weeks or so, usually on LinkedIn, I'll be posting probably once a day, at least, sometimes even twice a day. But in that period of 2-3 weeks, I just kind of stopped posting. And I know that posting is great for your brand, great for your businesses and all that sort of stuff. But I just kind of took a big step back and just tried not to care so much, just for a little bit, and to focus on spending my time just doing the things which I enjoy, so then I can recharge myself and come back and continue helping others.
Right, right. And how did it feel when you came back?
Oh, it was great. It was great until I hurt myself again. the I think just the mental clarity that you get from spending time or making the choice to spend time on things that you really enjoy, there's just something about it which makes you feel really energized. Even if you're doing things which are really physically tiring, afterwards you feel great. And I think that's something to do with probably like all the hormones and the feel good chemicals that get released when we do those activities. But I think there's something in it mentally as well, like you're making the decision to go and do something good for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I can totally relate to that sentiment, and it's a lesson I need to learn as well, to help myself first before helping others. I think we have a kind of similar mindset, that we're eager to help others. And for me, the best feeling is when I get an email from someone who took my training or read my book, sharing how they implemented the things they learned from the book and how it changes their life. For me, it gives a massive amount of purpose and reason why I do this type of work. But I need to realize and constantly remind myself that I first need to, be in a good shape physically and mentally, so that I can help the most people. But it's certainly something I need to be aware of. And you also talk a lot about mentorship. Yeah, and you're a very strong believer of mentorship. Why is that so important to you? How have you experienced that yourself, and what do you see right now with your mentees?
So I think the whole mentorship thing for me really started when I was making my transition into the data science industry. So a bit of my background when I started. So I studied a Bachelor of Commerce and mostly focused on actuarial studies and economics. So I did a lot of maths and statistics and different things like that. And then I started working in the data industry as a data analyst. After 2 years, I kind of got bored of what I was doing there, and I wanted to move into a data science role, something which I thought was more challenging, had more sexy things to it. And as I was making my way and learning, like doing all the things that people are doing these days to try and break into data science, doing Kaggle and reading books and doing blog posts and all those sorts of things, I was very, very lost. And I wish that I had someone who was kind of guiding me on that journey. So in a way, every time I make a post, it's almost like I'm posting to my past self, trying to provide younger Danny some sort of guidance. But as I was making that transition into a data science role, I was very lucky to actually have a few mentors of my own. And I think without those very experienced senior people in my life, things would have turned out very, very differently. And I'm eternally grateful to all the people that I've learnt from and all of the mentors who've given me a lot of assistance throughout the years. There's always one story that I usually tell all of my mentees, and it was one of the first data science projects that I took as a professional working in the workplace. And I was working with one of the best in the company at the time. And I literally learnt, I would say, almost 80 to 90% of all the skills that I use now from that one project. And that same experience is what really drives me to help others get that same single breakthrough project or experience that they need to kind of take them to the next level. Yeah, and I think having experienced the value and the importance of mentorship firsthand, it's something that I really, really want to get across to everyone that I work with.
Yeah, fantastic. And I believe it's so valuable as well. I think there are a lot of people lost, or they don't know how to make decisions, how to take the next step. And yeah, you're inspiring so many people and helping so many people with practical tips as well. And also on the side of mindset, how you need to approach such a career transitioning and how to break into data science. And it's great to see that you're making such a big difference.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, when was the first time you realized data was interesting? Because you just told about this first job you had, and also in actuary science. And was there one moment where you realized, hey, data is really interesting, I want to dive more into this?
So it was funny how I started off in actuarial science or actuarial studies. It was literally at the end of my high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My parents wanted me to do medicine. My marks were okay enough. I could have done law if I wanted to. But I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I actually couldn't do medicine because all of my exams for the medical exams and stuff, I didn't do very well. So I kind of, that was the end of that. And my career advisor at the time, he worked in the library, and he called me in, and I think he has sessions with every single student. And he said to me, "Oh, Danny, what do you want to do? Like, you're pretty good at sports. You can do physiotherapy or something like that. I don't know, most guys like doing engineering. You can do engineering. But I think you're pretty good at maths, right?" And I say, "Yeah, I'm okay. Like, I don't mind it. It's fine." And he said, "Why don't you apply for this thing?" And it was a scholarship for actuarial studies. And that was the first time I ever heard of the word actuarial or actuary. So I asked him, "What the hell is that?" And then he says, "Oh, it has something to do with maths. Maybe you'll be good at it." So I'm like, "Okay, sign me up, and I'll try and do this thing." So that night I put in my application for the scholarship. I go and do the interviews a few months later, and I somehow talk my way into a scholarship. And that was how I kind of started off in university. So I was very, very lucky that I learned from my dad how to talk to people, maybe.
Yeah.
And from there, the scholarship was really, really special. It gave us the opportunity to do internships with 3 different companies within the industry. So for actuarial studies, most of it was in insurance. There was a little bit of consulting and pricing, but most of it was in the insurance space. So I was really lucky. And my first internship, my manager at the time, I think the internship was with Allianz, so one of the German insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
My manager's friend was a manager at a data analytics consulting firm in Sydney. And that was in, I think this is in 2010. I met with the manager from the data analytics firm and just kind of talked about different things and kind of just bared my soul and told him I want to do something big and outrageous, but I have no idea what I'm doing. What should I do? And then he said, "Oh, well, here at Quantium, here's what we're doing. We're using data to predict what people are going to buy, and we're using it to revolutionize different parts of healthcare and all of those things." And in my mind, then I was kind of sold. I was like, okay, I want to do this data thing. I have no idea what it is, but I want to be part of that. And then from there, I kind of, at university, I didn't really study. I was too busy having fun and doing young people stuff. And I wanted to learn the things that would have been helpful for when I started my job in 2014 or something, when I finished my studies, but I kind of didn't. And it was fine. For me, I learned almost everything that I know now on the job. I think the only things that I learned from uni is a little bit about like probability and some of the things, because one of my professors did everything like a gambling scenario, and for some reason it really stuck to me. And it's probably really good for you as well with your experience as a professional poker player.
Yeah, give me an example about gambling and poker, and I'm hooked. I'm hooked. Yeah, nice to hear about your story and that progression you took, and then in your job and in your career, what have you noticed about the role of communication and communication skills and empathy and people skills in the field of data?
I think that having really good people skills and just general communication skills in our specific field in data is, I would say, it's almost a game changer. It's like it's a way to really supercharge I think your power essentially within any sort of role, but especially in the data, because traditionally, I think most data people, we tend not to be such great communicators. And the stereotypes are that the data people are kind of always looking at their screen. They don't know how to talk to other people and all of those sorts of negative stereotypes. And in a really sad way, it kind of gets perpetuated through time. And so I think these days, it's, if you are a data professional and you have really great communication skills, it's like the perfect combination. And for me, like, I've always just been sort of like a pretty extroverted person, always trying to talk to someone, or talking too much, or oversharing whatever I have on my mind. So those sorts of things came quite naturally to me. I think the parts which I had to learn over time was how to talk with different types of people and try to understand, like a lot of the times my painful experiences when I was working was usually either I got offside on someone because I stepped on their toes, or I didn't read the room properly and I said some of the things which hurt a lot of people and I had no idea what was going on. So I was just kind of being me, being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very interesting. And I think the whole point of, from your book as well, which is amazing. I have it on my table right now. There was a point about getting better at communication skills is almost like a lifelong pursuit. There's always a new scenario that you can learn from. You can always take something away from a new interaction with someone that you just meet. All of those things make me really, I think passionate is probably the right word, about improving my skills in that area, or at least having very genuine and clear conversations with others. I feel that over time, it's just something that I always focus on much more than say like I need to code a new Python program or something. Like I feel that the coding aspect of things it's like almost a given. Like if you work hard enough and you don't give up, eventually you'll get there. And I think it's the same with communication skills, but it's slightly different. You have to come at it from a different perspective, but it also has the same kind of, if you kind of like stick with it and you want to continue improving, you'll improve in the long run.
And you say you need to approach it from a different perspective. What do you think is the difference between, say, improving in Python coding or communication skills? What is your approach, and what tips do you have, or what approach do you take to improve in that area?
I was trying to get around that question because it's quite difficult.
No chance, Danny, no chance.
I would say, okay, so learning, let's say you're trying to improve your Python programming skills. There's a lot of blogs and a lot of technical content that you can learn from. And majority of the time, they will work for you. Well, you'll have to find the right sort of content that really vibes with you and something that you can learn from. But over time, if you just stick with it and keep working on your Python programming, you'll get really, really good at Python programming. However, on the other hand, I think for communication skills, when we're coding in Python, things are pretty static. Like the data types remain the same. The data might change every now and then, but there's still data frames. There's JSON files and CSV files, and things are relatively okay. Like you know the lay of the land. I feel when it comes to learning about communication and applying your learnings, every situation is a new situation. There might be situations which remind you of something from the past, but there's a quality about human interactions where every new interaction is literally a new interaction. It hasn't happened before. So there's that aspect of, I think, the unknown that you have to incorporate when you're trying to improve your skills in communication, because no scenario is ever going to be the same as something that you've faced before. But in programming, I think a lot of the times the scenarios will be the same. So it's a matter of just doing the repetitions. And in a way, like the communication is very similar, but different at the same time.
Right. I was really curious how you would answer this question, because you said I tried to get around it, but I was very curious, so I'm gonna ask. And I really like this answer because I think it's true. Because for communications, of course, you have frameworks. Of course, you have certain principles that you can use, but the uncertainty factor is huge. And of course, you can think, okay, Danny Ma is this kind of person. I can approach our podcast conversation this way, but I don't know how you're feeling today. If you had a bad day or a good day, and of course, I don't know everything about you. Maybe only 5%. There's so much more to discover, right? And that's even when you are fighting with your spouse or with a friend. Also, those interactions are not perfect and not very smooth sometimes. So I think I like how you approach that, and I also like that you highlight that communication skills and improving on that area is you're never done. And there's a misconception that some people have, and I really disagree, because some people say, okay, my communication skills are already fine, or they're good already, so I don't need to work on it. But I totally disagree. If you want to improve in your work or in your life, communication skills and interaction with other people is a big part of that equation. No matter how technical your job is, you need to be able to communicate your data, and continually improving and becoming more self-aware is so important in that space.
Definitely I connect with the self-awareness aspect a lot, because like I don't think I wouldn't say it was me in the past, but I feel whenever someone says like, oh, I'm an awesome communicator, or I have nothing to improve on my communication skills, it's usually a red flag. Most people who are great communicators would never say that sort of thing. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I agree. And what you're saying right now also, I see your humble mindset shine through as well. You seem to be a very humble person. Can you talk to me about that? Has it always been this way, and why do you think that is important?
Hmm. That's a great question. I've never been asked if I've been humble for a very long time. When I think back to my childhood, I never really tried to I never really tried to show off. I just wanted to share what I knew with other people. So it's like, oh, I tried this. I don't know, in primary school, I tried tackling someone because I played rugby when I was a kid. I'd teach my friends how to tackle people extra hard, or something like that. But I would never really do it in like a bragging sort of way. It wasn't like, oh, I'm better than you because I know XYZ. I just kind of wanted to share what I learned the other day. And I feel that that's been my mindset throughout my entire life, essentially. In a way, I think at work, right? When you do the knowledge sharing, it's good for yourself because you demonstrate that you know your stuff, and you also have to actually be very good at your stuff in order to teach other people what you're doing. But there's an extra dimension to it in the workplace because it's sort of like, oh, I've done this. I'm going to teach all of you how to do what I can already do, so we can do more together. And then I can go and do something else because now you guys can help me do what I was doing by myself. It's like, I don't know if some people would call it strategic, but in my mind, it's just, okay, I've learned this. What can I do next? I'm very happy to teach people everything that I know, but I'm off looking for the next thing because I'm super curious and just want to continue learning and enjoy myself, really.
Right. Yeah. And by learning more, I can imagine you can also spread more knowledge. So it goes both ways. So you keep on learning and spreading more knowledge into the world and to your coworkers. I'm I'm curious. So in terms of communication skills, what type of communication skills or what type of scenarios do you see data professionals struggle with?
I think the political side of things, when we talk about corporate work and workplace interactions and different things like that, I find that most of the time when whether it's me in that situation or seeing some of my peers, there are just sometimes or some conversations which always jump to my mind, and they were usually around like some political power plays where the data people just didn't really understand the whole dynamic of what was going on, and either they would get stuck holding the bag, or people would just get taken advantage of because they agreed to some little tiny thing that no one noticed, and then all of a sudden they're on the hook to deliver something by next week. I think it's a very common horror story for a lot of data people. But I think the most important one that a lot of data people, I would say, get wrong is they can't say no, and they're always saying yes. They want to please people. They want to, yes, I can deliver 3 projects even though I'm already working on 2 and I'm already stacked. I can just work harder. I think maybe it's the personality of people that work in the data industry. Like, we're always wanting to do more or trying to deliver the things that we say we're going to deliver. But yeah, I just find it super interesting that it's like a very shared experience with a lot of people that I've talked with, where we just can't say no. We just want to do everything, even if we're overloaded.
Right, right. And for the people listening who can relate to this, can relate to struggling saying no to people and being overloaded and still saying yes. Do you have any practical tips for people how to deal with that and how to avoid such a situation?
I think disclaimer, I'm not very good at doing this myself. I'm like one of those people who say yes to everything and then just kind of figure out what to do. But if I was a person who would say no, some of the really great advice that I've heard is it's applicable not just for this situation, but also for goal setting. I heard this very, like, some famous dude once mentioned this or something, where it was kind of like, write your top 10 goals that you want to achieve in your life and physically write them down on paper. So now that you've got 10 things that you want to do, he would then say, okay, choose 2 because that's what you're going to focus on. And when I first read that, I was like, whoa, that's pretty harsh, but very accurate. And I think if we took that same approach to what we can deliver at work, maybe not to such a drastic extent, but within reasonable limits. And if you communicate very strongly about, okay, I only have this much time, I can do this much with what I've got now. If you would like me to take on more work, there are some things which I will not be able to do. Which ones do you want me to let drop? And you kind of like push the onus on the other party to decide for you which things should get prioritized. But there are subtle ways that you can communicate that some things are more important than others. But I think, yeah, maybe that's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember reading this post or this piece of content about those 2 goals, and it seems so harsh, right? You have 10 goals or probably 100, and you're only allowed to choose 2, and it feels cruel. But I've also experienced that the less I do in terms of number of projects or tasks, the more I accomplish and the more I achieve. And I think it's very helpful for everyone. And what I also hear is that many people struggle understanding the business or create something that is in the end not being used by business stakeholders, whether it's not communicated well, it's not communicated in the story or with the right visualization, or there's not the buy-in. Do you have any more tips how to make sure you make an impact with your data? Because as you mentioned, data professionals are very passionate and they take on sometimes too many tasks, too much work. How can we, as data professionals, make sure that our work is appreciated and used in the business?
So these days, as I spend more time in the data world, I realize that we're not really solving data problems most of the time. What we're actually solving is almost a design problem, where the design of the message of what we're trying to share with the business stakeholders, if we design the experience of how they will understand what we're trying to tell them, and down to the very nitty gritty of, okay, what's like if you had 5 seconds to tell them what was the most important thing, how will you do it? And then kind of building backwards from there and adding more and more layers to the information in a very easy to understand manner at the right level for the audience, because the audience is always changing. Maybe some are more data literate than others. Maybe some are better at interpreting visual data visualizations because they've had some experience doing that sort of stuff. But sometimes you get maybe a very senior executive who has nothing to do with this at all. But you still need to convince them to do something that will benefit your team or benefit your business. How will you do it? And I think these days, the challenge is not so much, can you build the machine learning model that will give you like extra 1% accuracy, but how do you communicate that in terms of dollars to the bottom line and actionable insight to the person who needs to make the decision? I think maybe with I would say like with a design hat on, how do you work backwards and how do you design the right message so someone will take action off it? And then all of the data work is merely just to support what you're trying to communicate. And I felt for me, every time I take that sort of approach, it's as though my data just magically got better. because there was just much more value coming out of whatever I was doing. And the only change that I did was just to stop and think about how to communicate the message and then go from there, as opposed to traditionally most data people would do all the data and then we'll try and figure out some way to communicate it. I think going in reverse is a very, very good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I like that you emphasize on having a design hat on and the design perspective. And I think we can learn a lot from design thinking, empathizing first with the people in the business. What do they need? What type of answers or what type of questions are they trying to answer? And I like that. I like that. Because in the end, if we start with the end, we can work backwards and see how we start in the beginning, right? I think many data professionals just start and then, like you said, at the end have some results that they try to communicate. But also for the communication, we need to think about who is the who is the audience, what are their goals, and what does value mean to them? Because the executive will have different goals compared to the marketeer, and you need to make the data interesting to them. And yeah, I agree that many data professionals have a more like a one size fits all approach. Even though they might change a little bit, they don't have this, many people don't take this design perspective. So I like that. But I'm also wondering about, because you're very open on your LinkedIn account about your struggles, you show a lot of vulnerability. I was about to ask why is that, but I do know the answer to that, and I think many people know because you find it important. But have you always been this open about yourself? That's the question
No,
I would like to ask.
I was definitely not the open type of person. Um, I don't know what happened or what changed to make me want to be more of an open person. Um, I think growing up and everything, I was pretty open as a child. Like there was like we would all. I think most children are quite open and vulnerable in general. Whether it's, I think that's just something that is comes naturally to most humans. But over time, we kind of lose our way and kind of like I don't know different I would say life experiences have led to people becoming more and more closed or not wanting to share for fear of getting hurt or different things like that. And for me, it was definitely like that. So it was almost like a defense mechanism. Don't be vulnerable because people will take advantage of you, sort of thing. Um, but over time, I've realized that if you really want to be your true self and you want to like not just to be like be authentic, like everyone is telling everyone to be authentic and authenticity is everything. um I think it's beyond that labeling of I'm an authentic person, or I talk about what's on my sleeve or different things like that. It comes from vulnerability, and I feel that being open about what you're about the good times and the bad times is what kind of makes people real, and that leads to better connection, whether it's on a one-to-one call or if it's on, like, let's say social media where we're posting and trying to share our message with thousands of other people who read our posts. There's an aspect of connection which I really try and share. And I think one of the really heartwarming comments that I've received, not just on the post, but just from various people messaging me and different things, is that they can really feel that I'm there when I'm sharing something on LinkedIn. And that made me think about what I was trying. Like, I don't think I was even actively trying to do that. I was just kind of just doing it without realizing it. And at that moment, I realized that, oh, this seems like a pretty good strategy if you wanted to like show your true self and do those things on social media. But yeah, it was very interesting. I think I just kind of just went with it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the approach because LinkedIn is full of success stories, of course. And when people see someone like you with a big following, who being an entrepreneur, founder, very successful data scientist, they might assume that everything is perfect, right? like we see on Instagram, the perfect models, everyone is always on holiday, right? The perfect life. And I think on LinkedIn, partly you see the same, where people get new jobs and successes in this presentation and that. And I love that you're demonstrating this vulnerability, because it shows that you're human, right? That not every day is great. Sometimes you get injured, and and you have a lot of lessons from that people can learn from. So I think it's so important, and I love that you're doing that. And what I'm wondering, because you also talk a lot about self-belief, is there a link between those two, self-belief and vulnerability, or how do you see that?
Hmm. I've never thought about the link between both of them, actually.
Me neither, up to this
Up
moment.
till now, yeah. Uh, I would say if you're more vulnerable, as a person and as a human being, you you are more likely to accept failure. And I think that the key to having strong self-belief is accepting that you might fail. That
Right.
sounded really smart.
It did, and I think it makes total sense, because if you accept that you're failing, you're also open to it. You can share it with others, and you're growing. So I like that.
It's
I
very
like that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because I felt when I started my whole social media journey and kind of doing all the posting and live streaming and different things, there was always like I could really do a big failure here. Like I could really stuff up in front of thousands of people. Like that fear was always there. And it's not like, I think some of the like different people from different walks of life always talk about overcoming fear of failure, but it's not like it never disappears. It's always there. You just have to be stronger than it and
Mm-hmm.
still take action in the face of fear. And I think for a lot of people who maybe they don't acknowledge the fear or they don't recognize the fear, and they just kind of they assume that everything will be fine. Um, I'm sure there's lots of people who do that. And they just kind of have, I would say, blind faith in themselves that they can do everything. But I'm not sure if that's the optimal solution. I think that maybe the people who are the most aware of their shortcomings might be the ones who are in it for longer, and they have like the longer term plan of, okay, here's what I can do. I'm not here to do a miracle or anything. I'm just here to keep going day in, day out. And then at the end of it, it might seem like a miracle, but people have just been doing a lot of short steps, and there's bound to be little failures here and there.
Right, right. And that's often what you see, right? You see the success, but you don't see all the steps before that. And that's another reason why I think it's important to share those struggles or challenges, because you can share only successes, but there has been a lot of work before, um, for almost every time. So yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective. And what I would also be, be keen to learn, we talked a bit about communication, about your data career. What is something that you would you wish you knew when you started your data career? What piece of advice do you have for listeners who might be in the first 5 years of their data career or about to transition? What is something you wish you knew back then?
I wish I became a professional developer sooner. That was probably the one thing that I kind of regret. But by the time you learn how to do all the programming at a professional capacity, you can't unlearn it. So I think it's like the sooner you learn how to do things super properly, like 100% how they might do it at some of the leading tech companies or some of the top engineering discipline teams, the better. Not a lot of people will have the opportunity to be in a team that applies all those same principles and methods. So if you can somehow expose yourself to learning all those things and maybe linking up with people who have that experience and asking them to teach you, I really wish that I learnt how to program properly 5 years ago, maybe even sooner. I would have just done things a lot more efficiently and saved myself a lot of time.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. What I'm also curious about, because you're an entrepreneur, you have so many things on your plate. We talked in the beginning of the interview about, how do you balance? When do you need a break? Apart from that, what do you need to be productive? What does your ideal workday look like when you go to bed and have the feeling today was good?
That's a great question. I love those days where you get to even when you get to lunchtime and you feel, holy crap, I've done so much. The day is off to an amazing start. I'm going to continue smashing it for the rest of until I go to sleep. And then by the time you go to sleep at like 10 o'clock or even later, you just feel amazing. And then you go to sleep, have a really great sleep because you've worked so hard, and you come back and do it the next day. For me, so the thing I've been trying to experiment with recently is getting a really good night's sleep. And I'm like a habitual night owl. Like I can stay up to like 3 a.m. and I still won't be tired.
And your time zone doesn't help there either.
Yeah. And my time zone is like totally in the opposite side of the world. When it's like 10 a.m. in New York or something, it'll be like 3 a.m. here. So I'm just kind of always on. But lately I've been trying to wake up without an alarm clock. I don't know if there's anything scientific about it, but whenever I wake up naturally, I just feel like 100%. And it doesn't really matter if I've only had 5 hours or 6 hours of sleep. I just feel great. Of course, it's better if I have 7 or 8 hours, but I tend to wake up naturally after 6 or so hours. Something about sleep cycles or something like that. So it might just be like waking up at the end of a sleep cycle.
Mm-hmm. Maybe more naturally, indeed. Because I have the same feeling. When I wake up with an alarm clock, I'm a bit more groggy, or I need to push myself more to get out of bed. While when I wake up naturally, I feel ready for the day and ready for all the challenges ahead.
So usually, let's say I wake up, like the ideal day would be I go to sleep whenever. I wake up whenever, whenever my body tells me to wake up, and then I'll just start doing things. So usually, if I'm working on a challenging project, I would love to get a few hours out in the morning of, let's call it deep work, maybe 2 to 3 hours just focused on that, not looking at any emails. My internet is only for Google and Stack Overflow or whatever it is. I just kind of get a lot of stuff done. I think if I can get that done, my day is already, I would say it's half won, 50% won. Sometimes if I'm not going to be doing a deep work session, I'll try and go for a run or do some sort of exercise. Recently, since I've hurt my leg, I've been, just this morning, I went for a swim. So I drove to my gym and tried to swim as far as I can without drowning. So,
you managed.
I managed. I'm still alive. So I always feel amazing after either going for a good workout in the morning, or doing some deep work. So I try and do either one of those. And then it's off to work or starting to reply to emails and do other things. I try not to reply to emails throughout the day. I try and batch process emails maybe once or twice a day, so I'm not constantly replying to things. And as long as I get those things done, and then I think good nutrition is always important as well. So I try and eat clean, maintain my weight, make sure I'm getting enough fiber and protein and all of the good stuff. I think one of the things that I realized before, when I was quite overweight before, right? So I think I've lost like 10 kilos in the last 2 months or so, just by cleaning up my diet a little bit and doing a bit more exercise. I didn't realize that I was overeating so much. And so I forced myself to count calories because my girlfriend is doing the same thing. And we were just eating lots and lots of calories. So we just started being more aware of what we were eating, and we've just magically, it's like we've lost more weight, even though we don't feel hungry at all. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Oh,
I
great.
think a good day for me is getting some deep work, getting a good workout, eating well, having a good night's sleep,
Yeah,
having great
great.
conversations with people.
Yeah. Yeah, you also get energized from that, right? And it's great because we're talking about data, about career, about communication skills. But all the tips you shared about productivity are great as well for people, and to yeah, maybe not go to bed early and get enough, remove the alarm clock, eat well, do sports and the deep work. And I can totally relate to that, to do deep work in the morning as well. Makes my days so much better, um, instead of answering emails throughout the day. So something I'm trying as well. What I'm very curious about, of course, is what you do with data with Danny. So what type of work you do? You have several courses. You have the virtual data internship. Can you tell us more, and what are you doing, and how are you helping the people?
Mm. So the at the moment I've got my own, let's call it like an online school, a data school, which is called Data with Danny. You can find all the information at datawithdanny.com. Essentially, I wanted to create like a new style of online education for specifically for data professionals. So I wanted to almost provide the courses that I wish I had when I was starting, or I wish I had now when I need to train up my own team of employees and data scientists and data engineers and data analysts who work with me. So at the moment, we just have one course. I wish the plan was to have more courses by now. But we launched in just February this year, so February 2021, which feels like a very, very long time ago, even though it's just hit November now. And the one course that I've got right now is called Serious SQL. It's essentially everything that I've learned about SQL throughout my career condensed into one course. Most of it is in a written tutorial format with lots and lots of example code, lots of data. I set up the whole environment myself. So I actually went and created my own data sets for the course. I tried to make things relatively interesting and very realistic. So it essentially it will help train you from beginner. So I've had some of my students who've never coded before. And after 3 months or so, they've got like an amazing GitHub portfolio. People go to them as a SQL expert to try and answer their questions and different things like that. And I think it's crazy. It's very fulfilling for me to help people like that. But yeah, it's essentially from basics all the way through to relatively advanced as you'll ever need for, I would say, 95% of nearly all data analytics problems. There's a lot of example questions. I have more SQL case studies. I think we launched like the 8-week SQL challenge, which has 8 case studies, which are designed to be kind of like the case studies that you'll face in a real interview. And in fact, some companies have actually taken my case studies from that website and just used it as their interview questions, which is pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah. And this month, in the 20th of November, 2021, I'm starting to run some live SQL training as well. So this will be me teaching my own course from beginning to end over a series of weekends. I think the plan is to try and have it over 8 weeks, with there's 2 sessions each week. So in case you can't make one time, you can always come to the other one. You'll have to check my website to try and find the details. Can't remember what time it is. But yeah, I'll be live teaching that, and it's available to all students. And the price for all of this is $49 US for all of the content, access to all the live videos, recorded videos. We've got a big Discord community where I've got mentors who are helping me out as well. So I've got a few people who are always online answering questions and providing support for all the students. In fact, some of the mentors are actually students themselves. They've gone through the whole course and I've really enjoyed their energy and kind of provided them some mentorship, and they're helping me out with some of the community stuff. There's also opportunities to try and get some live or some one-on-one mentorship time with me directly. There are a few caveats around it where you have to be quite engaged in the community to earn some points and do all those sorts of things. So it's a little bit of gamification. But yeah, all of that is included for $49 US. And also there's a $20 discount for students. You just need to send me an email from your student ID, from your student email, or include a screenshot or something of your student ID. Send it through to support@datawithdanny.com, and I'll try and reply to you directly. But yeah,
it's really it's really great to hear and see the impact that you're making, because the feedback has been overwhelming. I've seen it on LinkedIn, and I think it's fantastic that you first of all make it as accessible to everyone with a very low price point, given all the value you provide, and also that you focus so much on the practical side, on implementation, not just videos where you watch, okay, how do I do this, but actually having cases where people work with data sets. And I think that's tremendously valuable. So thanks for having such a course and such an environment, and at such a accessible price as well, because I think it's very, very, very accessible. What I would like to, because we're approaching the end, I'm gonna ask a few quick questions, like a rapid fire round. Let's see, let's learn a bit more about you.
I'm ready.
So, you're ready? Cool. So what's your favorite place to travel?
Japan.
Your favorite movie or series?
Anything with Jason Statham.
And what music do you listen to while working?
Anything without lyrics.
All right. And what's the first career you dreamed of while being a kid?
I think firefighter or professional sportsman. One of them.
What's one thing about you that surprises people?
I used to have really long hair.
That does surprise me. Wow. Now I'm imagining you with long hair.
We find a photo of that.
I wanted to say I really want to include a picture now. And the last question: at what job would you be terrible?
Sales. Or anything that has to deal with like actual customers.
Thank you. So we're approaching the end, and I wanted to ask two things. First of all, do you have any books you would recommend to the listeners?
So luckily I have.
Oh, no, you're not. You're not plugging my book now, right?
So this book is really great. So this one, I think this book is awesome. I don't know if it's reversed, but this book is great. It's People Skills for Analytical Thinkers by Gilbert. I still can't pronounce your last name properly.
Okay. Do you have any other types of books?
This book is great. And this is another book. I also can't pronounce the name of this book, but this is one of my favorite books, actually.
Nice one.
It's, I think, coming from the Netherlands, you might know about this, but this book is called Nixon, The Dutch Art of Doing Nothing, with a really cool cat on the front. Yeah,
and it relates to the topic we discussed, right? Taking breaks and stepping back from all the work, because Nixon is indeed a Dutch word for doing nothing and kind of wandering around or sitting around doing nothing. Nice one. Thank you for promoting my book. And of course, that was not what I had in mind. But anyways, I appreciate it. What is one takeaway you want listeners to walk away with? What's a last message you want to share?
I think one part of our conversation, I want to go back and listen to what we talked about the vulnerability and failure and all those different things, because I think we learned something together there.
We did.
Yeah. But for all the listeners who are tuning in, I think not to sound cliche, but follow your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. Be strong in your conviction. Move forward when you can, and don't be afraid to take a few steps back and rest and find balance and continue doing the things that you enjoy. And I think just try to keep a big picture and always keep in mind the things which are really important. Like the things which are really important, not just everything that seems important. That's like advice to myself as well. But I think that would be it. That's a lot of pieces of advice.
Yeah. Now let's implement it all, right? Thank you very much for sharing that. And of course, you're active on LinkedIn. I know you have a Twitter account, your website, datawithdanny.com. Where can people follow you? What else would you like to share in terms of links or social media?
So I'm on social media. I am at Data with Danny everywhere, I think. I should have a Twitter and Instagram, which I don't really post on. I was thinking about doing a TikTok, but I don't know if I'm too old for it now. Like I'm in my 30s now, so we might have missed the boat. But most of my stuff is on LinkedIn, so just feel free to follow me. You can find me Danny Marr on LinkedIn or Data with Danny on LinkedIn. There's a picture of me with a Dogecoin shirt, which I got before Doge was very popular. But yeah, that's about it.
Great. So lots of opportunities for people to follow your work and connect with you. Danny, it was a pleasure. Thanks a lot for sharing all your wisdom, your challenges, your struggles, your vulnerability. I learned a lot today. You sparked my curiosity to ask questions I did not think I would ever ask. And I learned a lot, and hopefully the audience too. Thanks for this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I think we could have talked for many hours, but we're going to wrap up here. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks for everyone listening. And until next time.